Hey everyone, welcome to episode 114, 114 of Tuesdays with Perry. Thanks for joining me tonight. Perry and I haven't got together in close to a month. So tonight we're going to be talking about Joe Biden's cancer, the Moody's downgrade, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino interview where they said a couple things that were startling to MAGA. The Romanian election, bonding, Pam Bondi moves to arrest the Congresswoman, what was her name, MacGyver. We're also going to talk about tax cut policy, Trump moving to cut off funds from sanctuary states and cities and white South African farmers. We're going to do this all with Perry. These are some of the topics he wanted to talk about tonight. So let's get him on the line.
Hello?
Is that you?
Who's calling?
All right, I got you there. Hey, Perry, how's it going today?
Who am I speaking with? I don't recognize this voice.
It's been a while. It's been about a month.
Yeah.
How are you doing there? How are you doing there?
You know, Rudy, there's too little time to discuss what's happened to me in the past month, but let's just say I'm back and raring to go.
All right. Well, I got this list of stuff that you wanted to discuss. It's quite a list, but I'm going to go to, I think we're going to go here to number 6 because you need to explain this a little bit. The deliberate use of terms in tax cut policy and how tax cuts must not ever be considered an expenditure again. Oh, I talked about this previously. Tax cuts are not expenditures. You're just giving the money that was going into the asset column back to the taxpayer. We're not really spending it. We're just giving it back. Isn't that correct?
Well, bingo. You're always really good at this. You always know how to steal my thunder.
Well, I didn't quite understand it in first. So, why don't you talk about it?
Okay. One of my many pet peeves with government in general when it comes to tax policy, and the Republican Party in specific, is when they use the argument in order to give me some of my money back, we, meaning the elected officials that we send to Washington, D.C., we have to figure out how to pay for it. And I have, since I first started paying income taxes, now granted, from the time I was 16 through college, I got all my income taxes back. But when I started paying income taxes at age 16, they were talking about that under Jimmy Carter. They talked about that when Reagan demanded tax cuts. And they talked about that during George Herbert Walker Bush. If you remember, read my lips, no new taxes. And what did Tip O'Neill say? Well, we got to find a way to pay for this because we can't. The rich have to pay their fair share. And so the older I have become, the less patient I have become with elected officials in Washington, D.C. I don't care which party you're a part of. Do not insult my intelligence and tell me that requesting from me, the American taxpayer, less of my hard-earned money so that you can go on a spending spree for whatever purpose is something that should be regarded as an expenditure, meaning part of what it takes to run the government. Because remember, we said, going back to Uncle Joe's first 2 years in office, I used to say it, and I don't say it nearly as much anymore because we've got Donaldus Magnus back. But I used to say we have to reclaim the lexicon. Well, this is one of those things in the lexicon that must be drilled into the heads of every elected official on either side of the political aisle in Washington, D.C. I am fucking sick and tired of being told tax cuts are an expenditure. No, what tax cuts are is a way for me as an American citizen to control what you spend money on as an elected official. This is why I said to you this morning, we really need to talk about this. The American people need to stand up and say, do not tell me that giving me back more of my hard-earned money is somehow or other an expense for you when it comes to running the government. No, an expense is spending money on Solyndra, like Obama did 15 years ago, okay, when he was first in office. And where did those billions, hundreds of billions of dollars go? They evaporated into thin air. Those were tax dollars that went to fund a solar panel company that went belly up. Who were those people? Oh, that's right. They were friends of Barry. And so that's what government spends money on. And that's what I want to see less of. And so it's very important that all of us throughout the hinterlands start calling the mealy-mouthed, weak-kneed Republicans that fall in line when it comes to these Sunday talk shows and say, well, we have to find a way to pay for these tax cuts. No, you have to find a way to stop spending fucking money is what you need to do.
Right.
And so that's why I said to you, we really needed to talk about this. We need to drill down on this. We have to. You know, just like everything else that we talked about in the last 4 years, while Uncle Joe was, well, he was the marionette professing to be president. All during those years, one of the things that we talked about, and I specifically said at every opportunity you gave me, we have to reclaim the lexicon. We have to change the way people speak and return it to a sense of normalcy and reality. And so this is one of those things that we have to work on in order for MAGA to succeed. There is no reason on God's green earth why it takes even $5 trillion a year to run this government, even when you allow for, I don't know, what is it, Rudy, is it $1.1 trillion now to service the debt? So there's over $1 trillion of tax revenue that has to go just to service the debt. Right. And we got another $1 trillion that we're spending on defense. Okay, so we have $3 trillion left. Yeah. Another $2 trillion is just for Social Security and Medicare, not Medicaid, just Medicare.
Yeah, the liabilities. Yep.
All right. So when we get to the point where we have funded everything that the government absolutely must fund, then come talk to me about parks. Then come talk to me about education. Then come talk to me about other things. We have to get control of spending.
Absolutely.
And I just don't see it as something that will actually occur until we change how political opportunists on both sides of the aisle talk to us as individual citizens of this country. We must start going, I do, but we must start going to all these town halls so that when there's someone like a moderate Republican from, let's say, the state of New York, okay,
Lawler.
somebody from Long Island, who look, pick your poison. I don't care.
Yeah.
And one of us stands up, wherever they're giving their town hall out on Long Island, whether it's Ronkonkoma, whether it's Hempstead, I don't care. Somebody has to be there to say, Congressman, Congresswoman, stop insulting me. Stop insulting all of us here who voted for you. And stop calling tax cuts an expenditure.
Right.
You're not fooling anybody. Until these things happen, they're going to continue to try this because, let's face it, they're not getting enough blowback yet.
Yeah.
So that's why I said we really needed to talk about this. Because what do we have a $36 trillion debt. How are we ever going to reduce, forget about eliminate, how are we ever going to reduce that debt if we're going to continue to spend $6, $7, or more $trillion a year to run a bloated bureaucracy?
Right, when we're taking in about $4 trillion. Yeah. Well,
correct.
Trump's trying to do some stuff, and that's going to bring us to your next point: is Trump moving to cut off funds from sanctuary states and cities. Now, what is happening recently? I don't know if this is what you were alluding to, but it had to do with funding health care or other services for illegal immigrants, not immigrants,
Correct.
but illegal immigrants. And places like California and other states are doing the shell game they often do, where the federal.
Well, you're doing it. You're doing it now. Stop calling them illegal immigrants. They're illegal aliens.
Illegal aliens, right? Well,
Right.
the states play the shell game. If the federal government prohibits federal funds going to a certain thing, the states just take money out of the state coffers and then move the money around.
That's right.
So the federal
That's
funds
right.
aren't going to what they're talking about. But Trump is moving to cut state funds that provide any sort of funding for benefits, social benefits, welfare for illegal immigrants. So you say Trump is moving to cut off funds for sanctuary states and cities. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and once again, I can't thank him enough for taking these steps. And I say, and I think that's what he means, whether he'll do it or not. I say, for any sanctuary city, any sanctuary state, any sanctuary state that has a sanctuary city within it, we're going to cut off all funds. You're not going to get a dime from the federal government. Now, the problem with that is we have judges like Boasberg, okay? And we have weak-kneed conservative justices in SCOTUS who will not beat back these progressive socialist Marxist judges who don't give a damn about the Constitution. But Trump has to do it, like he's done everything else. And when challenged by these district court judges that are corrupt, hell, Pam Bondi just arrested another judge last week. Okay? Keep doing it. We're going to throw you in jail. If we're going to remove you by, again, now this goes to the speaker, we're going to remove you from the bench by simply not funding your courtroom. We're going to do whatever it takes. In order for that to happen, we have to have the weak-kneed Republicans going along with us. Yeah. And it's going, and that's another reason why I love Massey. He'll die on the hill that he is willing to die on when it comes to many things, but especially fiscal responsibility.
Right.
Am I happy about some of the things that he's standing on principle about? Well, no, I'm not, but I respect him for it. And I'm not angry with him. I'm just disappointed that he's not willing to step down from that hill.
Yeah.
To step off that hill.
Well, hopefully,
but I get it.
Yeah, hopefully he will, because although I'm not approving of all this spending, we need to get this bill through because it will be a victory no matter what, and we have to get this economy going. So,
and actually, that kind of segues into Moody.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go there now. That Moody, the credit rating agency, downgraded the United States from AAA, which has maintained for over 60 years, and now has downgraded us to AA plus plus plus. So what's your take on that?
Well, you and I, we see conspiracies everywhere, and I see a conspiracy here.
Oh, of course.
I see a conspiracy of bankers. And as you have said, as you and I have spoken on your show several times since Trump regained the White House, you asked me, and I told you, and we were in agreement, that the mofo who is currently the chairman of the Fed was not only not going to do anything to help Trump, he was going to stand in the way of Trump being successful at restarting the economy. And you asked me, how is that possible? I said, he's not going to lower rates. I said, I don't expect him to lower rates until we reach, like you have said, 2.0 or less percent when it comes to inflation. Until we reach that point, or there is a caveat, and we haven't talked about this, gross national product jumps up to 3% or higher. Because if the gross national product can jump that high and unemployment continues to fall, where we are technically, I don't know how that can be, but technically we are already at full employment. I don't believe it, but needless to say, that's what the so-called experts in the economy tell us. So Powell will not have any choice at that point except to lower rates. Now, getting back to Moody's, I said it's a conspiracy. I believe the bankers from around the world, all the central banks, I believe they talk to each other. Now, why the Brits central bank decided to lower rates last week? I think it was last week. Why they chose to lower rates by, I think it was 0.5 percentage point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And Powell refused. I'm sorry, what was that?
Yes. Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago, and yeah, the European Central Bank, or no, excuse me, the British Bank.
The British, right.
Yeah,
right.
They lowered
and
it.
So, that was a signal to Powell to consider, even if it was just 0.25 point, sending a signal to the markets. Okay, we've beaten inflation, and he's refusing to do that. Now, one of the other things that Trump is doing with the use of all these tariffs is, and this is something that of course the press doesn't talk about. Not even Fox talks about the billions and billions of dollars in tax revenue coming in through the new tariff protocol that Trump has put in place. And I believe that's part of the conspiracy too, because as our economy starts to come back, and when you look at, we're over $10 trillion of foreign investment that has been committed to our country in just the last 16 weeks. 10+ trillion. I've actually lost count. I know it's more than 10 trillion.
I mean, it's
been pledged.
It's over 10 years, but the pledge is still important.
But that's right.
Yeah.
But let's just say it's 11, 12, 15 trillion dollars over 10 years.
Yeah.
You and I both know what the impact of private enterprise investing on an annual basis $1 trillion into our economy, macro economy, means.
Yeah.
Okay? And so when Moody's looks at all of this and looks at how Trump is trying to rein in the spending of the federal government and how he's holding strong, there is no way the actuarialists at Moody's could look at what's going on in this country right now and say, geez, they're going to have greater debt by the end of fiscal year 2026 than they have right now in fiscal year 2025. There's no way that's going to happen under Trump, because as the economy takes off, as all this tax revenue comes in from new jobs being created, from new companies being created, from tariffs and everything else, and at the same time, how do you control inflation? Oh, that's right. You don't print money that you don't have.
Right.
So when all of this happens, how does Moody's come up with the idea that we're actually we're going in the wrong direction when it comes to government fiscal policy right now, but we weren't going in the wrong direction
right
18 months ago?
Right. They didn't do it under Biden. All of a sudden they do it under Trump. And not only that, but during a budget negotiation. I mean, come on.
Right.
I mean, it's written all over its face. Don't forget that Moody is not a government agency. It's a corporation.
Correct.
It's not a regulatory organization. It's a company that issues.
It's a company,
yeah.
But it's also a company that thinks globally.
Sure.
And they don't like nationalists because they can't control nationalists.
Yeah.
And so that's why I call what happened with Moody's a conspiracy amongst bankers.
Of course.
I really do.
Of course. And you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Let's talk about another conspiracy, though. The Romanian election. All right. Just to set this up, I don't want to steal your thunder again, but just let me set it up here. So if people didn't know, Romania is a big NATO member and it borders Ukraine. And the leading conservative populist who was against the war in Ukraine he won the election, and then they canceled the election, the Romanian authorities, the courts, and within the EU. And so then they barred this guy who won the election, barred him from running for office. So then they have another round, right? And the next conservative populist wins again. What's going on there? What's going on there, Perry?
Okay, so his understudy steps in and wins, and then there's a runoff. And the thing to put into perspective, and actually he did a really good job of it yesterday. He didn't outright win, because if he had, there wouldn't have been a runoff. But he trounced the other party candidates that were running for that office. And so the runoff was between himself and, I'm using air quotes, a so-called moderate. And somehow or other, there was this influx of votes that came. I think it was an additional 10% that came out of nowhere to vote during the runoff, but not during the actual election. And the vast majority of these additional votes in the runoff is what pushed his opponent out in front. Doesn't that sound familiar?
Yeah, it does. It sounds like they padded the vote. And so the mayor of Budapest, not Budapest, is it Budapest, Romania? The leading, the big city there in Romania. The mayor there, who was the moderate, ended up winning over Kalin Georgescu's understudy, because Kalin Georgescu was the populist conservative who was barred from running after he won. So now, if this is an interference here, I mean, it stinks of it.
Yep. And well, look, Romania is part of the former Eastern Bloc, the old Warsaw Pact. And for any member of the Romanian population that was born after 1949, they really did not know what it was like to live in a democratic form of government until 1989. So I was hoping they loved their newfound freedom, and for all intents and purposes, it is newfound because we're talking less than 50 years. I was really hoping the Romanian people would rise up against these shenanigans and demand relief, whether it came from the courts or not. The one thing that scares men in black, which is what I refer to high court justices, the one thing that scares men in black and suit and tie wearing politicians or politicos is when people do what happened on J6, or I forget the date, but when they stole Bolsonaro's re-election from him. I wish I could remember the date. When those people in Brazil rose up, they get scared, just like the Ayatollahs got scared during the Green Revolution. Okay? They were frightened. Matter of fact, there were reports, whether it was true or not, that they thought they were going to be overthrown, and they were gathering up things and getting on jets and getting ready to fly out because they thought they were going to be overthrown. And so politicos and judges don't like the fear of physical harm being done to them when the people that they govern stand up and say, I've had enough, and I am not going to accept your ruling anymore. And I thought that's what the Romanian people would do, but for whatever reason, it didn't happen.
Yeah, that was a shame. That was a shame. So there was obviously funny business going on because they're trying to stop this globally, this conservative resurgence. It's a populist resurgence. And even you see it in Germany with them outlawing, or not outlawing, but spying on the conservative party there.
Well, not just spying on them.
The AfD,
yeah. They're using their minstrels in the German press to demonize, and this is right out of the Alinsky book, Rules for Radicals. This is what they do, and look, we could go on. We can go much deeper into that. I'd rather not tonight.
Yeah. What do you want to go to next?
Well, you've got the list. Which is the next one you want to take?
Well, let's go to since we're talking about malfeasance, why don't we go to which was an unfortunate circumstance. The FBI director and deputy director Kash Patel and Dan Bongino were interviewed, and not only did they say that Epstein died of suicide, but they also said there's nothing to see here in regards to the Trump assassination attempt in Butler, that this guy acted alone. He was a lone wolf. So that leads me to believe that there was intelligence fingerprints all over both of these events, and they're just beyond their depth at this point.
I have a similar take. My take is in both cases, whether it's Butler or Epstein, well, especially Epstein, the dark forces within our government who saw to it that that man was not going to breathe another breath have done such a phenomenal job at covering their tracks. However they did it, that Bongino and Patel don't have enough to go on to go further into an investigation. I mean, if there isn't evidence there to be had because of whatever reason, I mean, are those guards that, air quote, fell asleep, are they still alive? I don't know.
Yeah.
Whoever was in charge of the camera and IT equipment that surveilled these supposed suicide-proof cells, were they interviewed? Were they found? What about whoever was responsible for putting the bed sheets on Epstein's bed? You know, they go to great lengths in every major penitentiary facility, whether it's Rikers Island or whether it's what the hell's the name of the place out there in California? Pelican, is it Pelican Bay? Whatever it is. Most people are not aware of this. The bed sheets that are put on that excuse of a mattress, they're made out of paper. I mean, they don't feel like paper, but they're made out of paper. Why are they made out of paper, Rudy? So that you can't hang yourself.
Yeah, right, exactly. And they fail again.
Right. So when you put all of this together, and I'm sitting there looking at my two heroes, I have so much respect for Patel after what he was put through. And, you know, Danny being a boy from Queens and being a tough kid and what he went through as a cop and then becoming Secret Service and now being deputy director of the FBI. And he's no nonsense. And he calls balls and strikes. When he sees it, he doesn't care where the chips may fall. Now, I understand. He's not on his own podcast anymore. He's a civil servant, and he has to answer to other people, starting with Patel, then Bondi, and then the President of the United States, who happens to be a friend of his. But he has to answer to those people. I have too much belief in him, even more so than Patel, that if there was something there they could go after, they would.
Right.
So people like you and I are going to say this to our dying breath. Epstein was Clintonized or Clintonized.
Right.
And we know that.
Yeah.
We know that.
Yep. If he was killed. But I mean, it's very likely he was killed because his brother saw the body, and the brother's medical examiner, William Bodden, said that the neck, the clavicle was broken in several places, and that only happens due to strangulation. I want to move on because we got a few minutes left. Last parting things about Patel and Bongino is you're basically saying their hands are tied. They have nothing to see here. They're not part of a cover-up, but the cover-up has already happened, and so there's nothing for them to see, including
right.
the assassination attempt. The only thing that sticks out obviously is the device, the cell phone he had with him with encrypted communications. Why would he have it with him at the time of the shooting? And with whom was he communicating? But if they don't have evidence, they don't have evidence. So let's go to two stories really quick here. The one is the prominent one here is Biden's cancer diagnosis. So give me a couple minutes on that. And then, of course, Pam Bondi and the DOJ charging, what's her name, LaMonica McIver, the congresswoman of New Jersey, who tried to push past law enforcement to get into an ICE facility. And she said she was doing her due diligence, doing a site check, but that's not the way you go about it.
Right. Well, as far as McIver is concerned, she's one of the big mouths, and there are plenty of them to go around in the Democrat Party that for the last 4.5 years have screamed from the mountaintop, no one is above the law when referring to Donald Trump. Well, bitch, you're right. No one's above the law. And you assaulted a federal police officer, an ICE officer. You're not allowed, as a member of Congress, special rights to. Now, she didn't put her hands on him, but she bull rushed him like she was an offensive lineman for the New York Jets. And you can't do that. Whether you're Rudy or Perry or a U.S. congressman or senator, you're not allowed to put any part of your body unwantedly against another person.
Particularly,
when you do that, that's simple assault.
Yeah, particularly a law enforcement officer. There's a smaller threshold.
That's right. That's right.
You bump into somebody, just a normal person, that's one thing. If you bump intentionally into a police officer, that is definitely assault.
Right. I mean, look, if she tripped and fell, if she tripped and fell and pushed into the officer, I don't think we would be where we're at today. But the reason why I'm glad this woman is going to have to surrender herself and get booked is because it's sending a message not only to all Democrats, but especially Hakeem Jeffries. You don't have any power. Because if you remember, it was Hakeem Jeffries who threatened not only Speaker Johnson, but AG Bondi. You better not put any one of my members in jail. Well, we just did, motherfucker. What you gonna do about it? You're going. I'll tell you what's happening. It's just going to feed what's coming during the heat of this summer. They're going to do another George Floyd somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And this is just a precursor to that. But the important thing is it's getting no traction. Now she did this because she wanted clicks. She's trying to one up Jasmine Crockett. You see, Jazz, you ain't the only sister that can do this. I could do it too.
Yeah.
And so now her name is out there. She's going to be prosecuted. She's going to get a slap on the wrist. That's all it is. Just like Bowman pulling the damn fire alarm.
Well,
no different.
Yeah, there was the mayor, Ross something or other, who's running for the governor of New Jersey, who was arrested also, and they dropped the charges against him. Yep.
Right. But all of this could have been avoided if they just did what was requested. And it's always requested by any federal facility. you're an elected member of Congress. You have a right to not investigate,
site check,
but to make a site visit. Right. You want to make sure things are being done as they're supposed to be. All that takes is making a formal request, setting a date, and coming on by. But that's not what you did. You showed up, you protested, you waited for a bus full of illegal aliens, violent illegal aliens, by the way, to show up at the gate, and you tried to sneak in behind the bus. And you wonder why you were stopped by guards, and you were told you can't enter. And when you refused to listen, all of a sudden, well-weaponized ICE officers stepped up. And so, look, it's all a game. It's all about getting her face on TV. It was all about him getting publicity for his campaign because he's going nowhere as a candidate. I get it. I just find it amusing because now the shoe is on the other foot.
Yeah.
Oh, you've been screaming for 5 years. No one's above the law. You hear that, Letitia? No one's above the law. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there once the investigation into Letitia James is completed and then turned over to the AG for prosecution. Yeah. That's going to be fun.
Yeah. That's kind of open shut for sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
We'll see. Yep. And Trump, if you saw Trump, his interview in the House was hysterical. He said, this shit is over. This woke nonsense is over. And then he talked about his first term and then getting cheated in the election and whatever. And then he goes, and they never thought I would come back. And now I'm back and I'm going to shove it up their ass. Now I'm back to shove it up their ass. I go damn straight with a candle on it. All right, let's.
That's the beauty of being limited to 4 years.
Yeah.
And he has the right team in place. And if you look at what he accomplished, and we don't have time to go into detail with this today, but if you look at what he accomplished last weekend over in the Middle East and how the press is now trying to portray him as turning his back on Israel, because of course he flew over Israel, he didn't land there. If that's the best they can come up with, so much the better. Hey. Because every one of those countries that Trump landed in has exchanged, with the exception of Saudi Arabia, has exchanged ambassadors with the state of Israel. And, oh, by the way, they do commerce on a daily basis now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so, look, it's like you and I have joked before, oh, Mr. President, I can't take all this winning.
Well, you even have people like there's a congressman who's on the Intelligence Committee here in Connecticut, Jim Himes, who actually lauded President Trump and said he's doing a pretty good job. All right, let's end up with Biden's cancer diagnosis, or you had prognosis here. Prognosis negative. What's your take on this?
Well, of course, Ezekiel Emanuel had to open his big friggin' mouth and make the comment that, well, they knew about this because it's already metastasized to the bone. So he's had this for years.
Oh, yeah.
They just didn't want anybody to know. Maybe. But you want to know what I think? I think if he really did get the jab in 2021, there's a lot of people that have gotten turbo cancer in the last 3 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And turbo cancer doesn't happen out of the blue.
Yeah. Or he might have been in remission. He might have had prostate cancer and had been in a remission, and then he gets the jab and it goes crazy, of course.
the whole purpose of this being news now is to do away with all the potential investigations that are going to be done into Team Biden. This, is to see to it that he never gets investigated.
Oh yeah.
And that's why all of this is coming to be. And so you got to read between the lines. And again, yes, call me a conspiracy theorist, but there's a reason why certain things happen when they happen, to whom they happen to. And I just think that the whole reason for this suddenly appearing in the news as of last Friday was simply because they needed to find something to make all these potential investigations go away. And that's how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
But before we go, I do want to say one thing, that going back to Bongino and Patel. Remember our friends Peter Strzok and his girlfriend and Jimmy Comey, who made news by saying, I had no idea 86 means to threaten someone with their life. All these people, it was intimated by both those men when they were talking to Maria Bartiromo. Watch and see, and I'm saying this to your audience, this is almost verbatim what Dan Bongino said. Watch and see what happens over the next 2 weeks in the news. I believe indictments are coming. Now, I don't mean 2 weeks from now, but Patel and Bongino have found the dirt. There are people on Rumble, other people that I listen to, who supposedly have an inside track, and they've said, more than one of these podcast hosts have said, they thought, meaning the conspirators who tried to set up Trump, they thought they had covered their tracks. They had destroyed the evidence. But they don't have people like Elon Musk who know how to find what was supposedly destroyed.
Right.
It's coming.
Yeah, I bet you. And I actually think that Comey is trying to beat them to the punch with a little misinformation, disinformation with his book, and then to do this thing on the beach, and he knew it would cause a ruckus, and he's hoping that people are going to get confused between this and the other stuff that's going to be brought up by the DOJ.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Look, we have what I believe is going to be one of the three best attorney generals in my lifetime is currently serving. And I'm telling you, she might be a pretty blonde, but you do not want to fuck with this woman.
Yeah. Let's
She's tough as nails. And I'm saying that from experience because she was my AG here in the state of Florida for 8 years.
Yeah, well, let's hope that's the case. And just before we go, we're not going to be able to get out to the white South African farmers. We're going to have to save that to next week. That's going to be an ongoing story. Just going back to the Biden's cancer diagnosis, we know that the investigations are going in to the Biden family, not just their criminal enterprise, but the fact that they knew that he was mentally incompetent and there were other people running the government at the time, which is illegal. And so even David Axelrod, the old political strategist for the Democrats, even said just recently that, yes, this is going to soften the inquiry and the questions. And let's not be rude now. This guy's dying to start digging up stuff on Joe Biden.
Right. And
Yeah.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. That's why I'm saying, and you've reiterated, that's why they're going to try and stop these investigations, because the investigations have to do with Club Biden, and as you've just illustrated, who was really running the United States of America for the prior 4 years.
Right.
Because we know it wasn't Uncle Joe.
Right.
And we know that there was no way they were going to let Kamala do it.
Yeah. No, it's not her. It's all goes back to Barack Obama, because Barack Obama who was running Comey and the intelligence apparatus that was trying to undermine Trump in his campaign and during his presidency. And then Joe Biden gets elected falsely. He's still being run by Barack Obama. And first it was the conduit was Ron Klain, and then we got wise to it. So Klain steps down, and then it gets kind of fuzzy who was running it after that. Maybe it was Jill who the conduit was. But we're going to find the truth.
I wouldn't be surprised if Jill had a lot to do with it, because as far as I know, in the last century, the only first lady to ever sit at the head of the cabinet table when her husband, the president of the United States, was absent from duty was none other than Eleanor Roosevelt.
Eleanor Roosevelt, right? That's what I thought. And the thing is, she doesn't hold an official post.
Bingo.
So FOI, and I think that's why Ron Klain had to step down. So FOI doesn't apply, and some of the investigative powers won't apply. So we're going to leave it there for tonight. This was really great to get back and talking to you, Perry. So we're going to have to do it again next week. Okay, my friend?
Oh, same bat time, same bat channel.
Great to talk to you, my friend. We'll see you next week.
All right, buddy. Talk to you then.
All right. Peace out.
Bye-bye.
Bye. There goes Perry. Another episode, 114 of Tuesdays with Perry. Oh, it's great to talk to him again. We covered a lot of ground there, and we illustrated some enlightened viewpoints about what exactly is happening in the big picture on a bunch of different fronts. Thanks for joining us tonight. Every Tuesday around 9:15 or so, live on Rumble. So join me tomorrow for my daily podcast, Rudy's Revelation, 10 a.m. Actually, if you're listening to this, I might be a little later tomorrow because I got a couple things I got to do in the morning, but we're still going to have an episode, Rudy's Revelation, live on Rumble, 10 a.m. All right. Peace out. Thanks for joining us.